Hi, gentlemen. Los Angeles. And those of you watching from all around the world. Say hi to both of them. He's been warned not to talk during the intro. He's a good listener. Not only is he a good listener, he's a good friend, and he is a very special talent in this world. Guys, welcome to another episode of To Live and Buy in Los Angeles. I am your co-host, Zach Goldsmith, sitting alongside my co-star from Revenge of the Nerds, Benjamin Ira Belek. Today's episode is very exciting. I get it. I get excited about a lot of episodes. I get excited about a lot of things in my life. But this is special because Justin is special. He specializes in storytelling. That, to me, would you agree with that?
We'll see where you go with this.
Don't speak during the intro. Justin specializes in storytelling, which has always fascinated both of us. Me especially, I think, because I don't consider myself a good storyteller at all. I don't even know that I have a story to tell half the time. And even when I do, I don't feel great about it. So that's why he's here. It's really another class for me, and you guys join in if you will. Justin is an accomplished Hollywood TV writer. He is head of strategic narratives at Snapchat. Think a position he made up. They made up for him. And an adjunct professor at UCLA Anderson School of Management, where he co-created and teaches the first ever Hollywood-inspired storytelling in a business setting class, correct? Offered nowhere else in the world, I think that's fair to say. Ladies and gentlemen, an incredible storyteller, dictator, martyr, Justin Sternberg.
Am I allowed to talk yet?
Yeah, the intro's over. Why wouldn't you be allowed to talk?
I'm excited to be here at this. Thank you.
I think we're very excited to have him. Ben, you care?
Yes, of course I care.
He's studying GarageBand.
I'm really
on his
interested
laptop.
in the storytelling in a business setting.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to some of that. A lot of that, whatever you can tell in that. So tell us, first of all, why storytelling is important for those of us who aren't actors or writers, directors, musicians, the typical storytellers.
Yeah, I would say the truth is I had absolutely no idea how it was impactful for anybody actually outside of Hollywood. I spent the last 20 years of my life and my career in Hollywood writing TV shows. Right before the pandemic, I was lucky enough that Billy Joel gave Paul Reiser and I his life rights and his music, and together with Billy, we created Piano Man for Universal. It was a TV show that I was incredibly passionate about. I was incredibly excited about. It was something that it was kind of almost a dream come true. And then the pandemic happened right around when we turned the script in. And I really was just going to use those 2 weeks we were calling back then to flatten the curve, to spend with my family, to play games. And the phone started ringing. And it was friends who were crying. And I was like, what can I do to help? And I quickly realized they were all losing jobs because of the pandemic. Their companies were losing funding because of the pandemic. And I was like, what can I do to help? You need money. You just need someone to talk to. Whatever it is, I am here as a friend.
He's like the boss. What do you need? You need some money?
One day I come to you for a favor.
Oh, what else did they say to you? Tell us a bit about it.
Yours is constipated.
Yeah, they usually are.
Sorry, God. Please continue.
And so what I realized was they didn't need any of that. They needed a story. And so I helped them tell their story. And quickly, in the middle of the pandemic, people that were losing jobs were getting jobs because they told a better story. And companies that were losing hundreds of thousands of dollars were now being reevaluated in the tens of millions. Nothing changed but the way they presented and pitched their story. And I quickly realized there was something really powerful there. And so I really was just helping friends when suddenly so many people started to ask for help. Then I went upstairs to my office, and in this new technology I'd never heard of called Zoom, and I created a presentation. And I was like, look, this is what we do in Hollywood. It's really easy. There's certain beats you have to hit, and if you can hit those beats, you too can tell a great story. That was sent around the world, and before you know it, I was brought in to help with vaccine hesitancy with the Presidential Innovation Fellows at the White House. That's when I started consulting with CEOs, and then I was brought over to UCLA by the dean and asked to co-create the first ever class in a business setting for storytelling.
Interesting.
I think you get to a place, as I think every creator understands, whether it's a business or even a script, you believe in it so much. Like, you know it's right. You know that the world needs your idea, it needs the character, it needs this story. Or for a business setting, it needs this product or it needs your service. Like, it passionately just moves you every single day. And yet you get in front of someone who can make that happen for you, could buy that product off of you, and they look at you and go, nah, And you just kind of go, what else do I need to do? I must not be saying this correctly. I must not be, what is built up inside of me must not be coming out in the way that I believe it. And so you find that, yeah, there is something really special, but we have to tap into it. We have to understand the problem and solution, and we have to bring it out of you in such a way that you don't just hear it, you actually feel it. Because that's really the difference right there. I mean, how many times have you walked out of a movie and you're like, nothing happened? Well, a lot happened. $100 million was spent. Actors were paid. A year long of production was made. But you walked out and go, nothing happened. Well, you didn't feel anything. And therefore, it almost felt like that was a waste of your time.
Right.
That's because Hollywood got away from all those period Keira Knightley movies that I like so much and started making 3.5-hour odysseys with Martin Scorsese that I literally could not get through.
We'll do a movie review. Sorry for that. So these people come to you. They learn how to tell their story, so it separates them from the pack. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think it does a few things. I think they learn how to better tell their story. They also learn what makes them separate from the crowd. What's their differentiator? What's their superpower? You know, I think a lot of people know they can do something good, but they can't put the finger on it. One thing I do a lot at class is I'll say, you know, what differentiates you? And someone will say, like, you know, I think outside the box. And I'll go on to like monster.com and write, think outside the box, search. Well, not a single job comes up. Right? Or like, I'm a team player, search, nothing comes up. And so we say these words, we use these adjectives that we think people want, but we don't know what it means. And so what I found is we start to really understand, well, what makes you unique and special? What would make you stand out? And in amongst of 100 other or thousands of other people applying for this job, what makes you memorable?
So that we can use, you and I talk a lot about our superpowers.
I want to write Zach's.
No, please, not on air. Anyway.
He's really superly powerful at not listening to the end of my sentences.
Do we put bad stuff on there? No, we're putting.
But you aren't. That is your superpower.
Hold on, I don't want to finish this. So, okay, if we come to you, you can help flush out our own story, right? I understand that. So that when we're going for a job interview, when we're trying to sell ourselves for a listing, when we're trying to sell a property, when we're trying to sell our services, whatever it is, you're giving a personal story and you're connecting so someone feels rather than just hears the information that you spew about their house and the analytics.
Well, for me, honestly, I
wasn't talking directly to you.
The way I choose what story to tell now, like I used to have when I first came to the company in 2014, I would just pitch the firm. Then I moved to pitching myself. Then I moved to just asking a ton of questions, and based on the answers to the questions is the story I choose. Like I kind of work backwards.
Fair enough, but don't you think that when you go on a listing appointment, they want to hear who you are, not just what you can do for them or what they need. They want to hear who you are. They want to connect with you. They want to feel that you are their guy.
But I think it's a mixture of both. I think they want to connect with you emotionally, that they can root for you and like you and trust you.
Root for you. That's an
And then I
interesting
think
one.
it's the second half of every story that I help build is like, well, what's the future hold? So great. So you're great at this. That's wonderful. But how's it going to get me the house I want faster, quicker, and easier? Because if it can't, then you and I should go get a beer, but I'm not going to hire you. And it's why I like to say a lot of times for the business side, Hollywood creates great stories. Business leaders need to create effective stories. What about it is going to drive change in the person that is listening to the story? Because if they just go, cool, greatest story I've ever heard, that's a great story. That's not an effective story.
Yeah, it's like if someone says "got it" at the end, not an effective.
Not
story.
an effective story at all. And by definition, a story has to have change.
Got it.
So a lot of times we'll say, okay, open up your remarks with a metaphor or with a story. And Zach gets up and gives an anecdote or a metaphor. A story, by definition, is the only one that the beginning and the end change. And that's why scientifically, when you tell an actual story, the listener hears change. And that's why change can start to brew inside of them in a way that a metaphor and anecdote never would.
You don't. No changes in a metaphor, huh?
By
Guess you
definition,
can't.
story has to have change. The
Yeah.
beginning and end have to be different.
So, like so many of us, I don't feel like I have a really interesting story to tell. Like, what is so compelling about my life? How much adversity have I gone through to make it interesting and engaging? I must, right?
Yeah, everyone's got a story. I think we sometimes trip up on the fact that my neighbor, has this most compelling story ever, and I can never compete with that. I think we have to realize what got us here today is an interesting story. It has ups and downs. It has turns. It has off ramps. It has car wrecks. Things got you here. And so we need to understand what got you here and how that built you to be somebody even more greater than you ever would have been if that process had never happened.
And also, the story doesn't need to have happened to you. It can be a case study that moved you. I'm often telling case studies to people that I think are at risk of becoming similar case studies or can reap the benefit of being a similar case study.
Sure. I think when we're sitting down and talking to you, and at least in most jobs, and maybe it's different in your line of work, but usually they're like, all right, tell me about yourself. Why you? Right? You need to have what I call an Olympic story, that 90-second story that they just comes out, it flows out of you, it's honest and true, it connects what you are different about, what makes you special, and how that will make their life better and easier by going and picking you.
Right. So that you mentioned the Olympic
Have one.
story. You and I talk about that quite a bit also. Can you give us the brief, 2-minute version of what the Olympic story is? Because, and by the way, you got to YouTube this if you haven't watched the whole hour. It's really compelling. It's basic but compelling, where you give 4 beats on basically how to break down and flush out your own story. And it doesn't have to be dramatic like the Olympian story you talked about.
Not at all. I mean, look, every story you've ever heard from the beginning of time is 4 beats. It's I was somebody, something happened to me, I struggled, and I'm better because of it. Literally from cave people time onwards, that has been the basis. Now in Hollywood, we need you to stay in your seat longer and therefore eat more popcorn, eat more candy, because that's how theaters make money. And so they added 11 other beats throughout it, which is why, those moments where the bad guy's about to kill the good guy and everyone's like, oh my God, the trigger's gonna get pulled, and it never does. It's just to let them regroup, bad guys regroup, and then it lets everyone kind of move forward. But the 4 beats are, and those 4. And so what we kind of term them when I work with business leaders and CEOs as world before, what was, life interrupted, something had to have happened to you. I don't care that you chose real estate, that's not exciting. I want to know where you maybe failed before that brought you into real estate. And then perilous path, the struggle. What was it like being in this new world? What was it being part of something you didn't understand before, something you were not an expert in? And all of those struggles, all of that life interrupting led you to a better place of this thing we called treasure discovered. And it's treasure discovered, not treasure found, because you discover something. It wasn't dropped into your lap. You actually had to do the hard work of figuring out all these other moments, got you here, and you're so incredibly excited that it got you here because you are now better positioned than anybody else to do whatever needs to be done going forward.
I think I naturally tell an Olympic story.
Yeah.
That in
I
my
think you
listing
do.
appointments.
I've seen you before naturally display these
No, like when people
characteristics.
ask me my value proposition in short, and I try to keep it as short as possible, I basically tell them that I was pursuing an acting career with every cell in my body, and I grew exhausted by hospitality and ultimately could not proceed any further on that path. And when I was getting to the point where I was transitioning into real estate, and casting who had put me on TV before on multiple TV shows would not bring me in for role of realtor, I knew this was not the right energy for me. I always had an entrepreneurial scratch. It needed to be itched. But once I wanted to start really selling the houses that were like north of $10 million that were being more readily handed off to people that were in the business for decades or grew up here, I had to start going door to door. And I was like walking up and down Coldwater Canyon because I knew people would be home at dinner time, 6 o'clock, almost getting hit by cars. But as you can imagine, it's much harder to sell a house when it's no longer new. So I had to be that much more innovative, that much more scrappy, that much more technologically on it, all these things. And I usually use that story as kind of a differentiator. It sounds like, though, based on what you
100%.
described, it could be better.
Did he
Yeah, but
hit the?
you
he hit
did.
the
I mean,
beats?
I'd want to
He
paint.
He uses puppets, by the way. He didn't tell you that, but he does a puppet show, which is
Claymation.
really cool. I've seen it.
I think you get all the beats. I mean, you want to talk about the beginning of what you loved about acting and connect those to what you love about real estate.
Oh, yeah.
Because what you start to realize is you didn't choose to leave. You had to leave.
Yeah,
there was no
had to.
choice, right? Because life interrupted you.
Yeah.
And it was like, what do I do? My entire life and career was supposed to be doing this, which was, the idea of compelling another idea and bringing people joy and laughter in a way that they didn't see possible. And then what you do is when you get to Treasure Discovered is what I kind of realized was what I loved about acting and what I loved about being an entrepreneur is exactly what it is being a real estate agent. It's me being able to talk and deliver and show all these different things that bring you the joy, that get you to the happiness. It just wasn't through a screen. It was through a house and a property.
I got a free coaching session live. You're on.
That's what I told you. That's why he's here. It's like, hey, you want to give us a freebie?
Thank you. That's amazing. I knew I was missing something.
They've done great research where if you walk into an interview and you say 3 things about yourself as an adjective, I think outside the box again, or I'm a team player or whatever, we hear it, we remember it, and the minute you walk out the door, we quickly forget it. But if you tell me a story about being a team player, and then you walk out the door, I immediately connect Zach to being a team player. And if I connect you to that word, it stays in my memory and gets accessed much quicker, faster, and easier because of it. So it's which is why when I always talk to and CEOs and everyone, I'm always like, there's 4 questions we always ask, right? Who are you talking to? Because to your point, Ben, you have to, an audience is different, right? If it's your mom versus someone else, well, the audience matters. What do you want them to feel? Again, because feeling is connected. And then it becomes this idea of what your superpower is, what's your differentiator, and what's that moment from your own life. Because we have to know what our differentiator is. What do you want them to think and see? And what's that story that when they hear Ben's name or Zach's name, that story pops up about you going door to door, or you have connecting the love and joy of happiness for others through a television screen or now a piece of property. That comes back. That stays memorable. It becomes sticky, to quote the Heath brothers. And that sticks much longer than like, he's a guy at the agency, and I think he sold my mom's sister.
Yeah.
Lost.
Yeah. So, like that, you used a great example. So quickly, like, how would you summarize my story? Would you advise that I use the fact that I used to be in stand-up comedy? Like, that was my dream. That was inside of me. Still is. Always will be. But could consider me a failed comic. Never made it. Never pursued it enough to make it. And fell into real estate and now do well in real estate. But am I accessing that superpower?
Well, you're right. You are a bad storyteller.
But are
That's
you
fucking terrible?
That's so mean. I'm trying to learn and be flushed out here. I'm trying to flush it out. I'm not going to go in to the listing point and be like, look.
You're like, I'm a failed comic. I wasn't good at
something
it.
Here?
I fell into real
Do you
estate.
think there's something here for us?
Here I am.
All
what
right.
about a
Well,
story
nice
about
meeting
your
you.
mom? Like, as a mama's boy, your mom was in real estate forever, and like you fought it, and you didn't want to do it, and you didn't want to follow in her footsteps, and like it was amazing. Your dad used to ride around in the car with her and all that, and you pursued your passion to be funny and all these things, and then like there's some connection towards as he made with my acting world and real estate, the joy I got from it, actually returning back and working and learning from your mom. I just like something. Instead of like, I was not funny. I wasn't funny.
I didn't say I wasn't funny, pal. I said I didn't pursue it long enough. I had too many obstacles. I had fear, the fear of failure, the fear of success.
You weren't funny? I'm sorry, he's so upset. He's so upset.
Cut him off here.
These West Coast guys, they can't take the ball busting. It's like they don't have a comeback.
I'm flushing out learning. I'm vulnerable right now. I'm trying to learn
All right, I
from you.
apologize.
You're like, you're a fucking moron, kid.
I'm sorry.
It's like taking your son out of the game for not pitching well. Hey, come here, kid. Your problem is you can't pitch and you suck at
Okay,
everything.
fine. Be vulnerable. I apologize.
No, it's fine. I'll be vulnerable with you. So, do you like any of what he's adding about my mom and the twist?
Again, I think it comes down to 2 things. What do you want them to feel about you, right? What's that thing you're going to remember? And what's your superpower? What differentiates you? If it's the idea that my actual passion and dream was in front of me my entire time, but it was covered in family, and I was running away from family, but it was pushing me away from what I always wanted to do and what I was actually great at. And it wasn't until these other things failed that I realized I had to get over the idea that just because it was close and easy doesn't mean I can't be great at it. Then yes, I think that story does work. And it's easily the fact of, my superpower, the thing I'm amazing at was just something I ran away from because it seemed too easy to always be in front of me. But if it's the idea that what I was great at as a comic or as a writer or as a comedian or whatever it might be, just didn't work as great on the stage as it does at a listing. And I was able to channel that inner special connection and empathy and ability to tell them something unexpected, but also hit them in a way that they felt it and got excited by it. And that laughter actually opened them up and made them more vulnerable to take a chance and believe in me. Then I think you could easily connect that to what you're doing now.
Yeah, I would connect it as that still is what I think is my superpower. That is involved in my superpower, the comedy.
And you could even possibly merge both of them together, of this idea of, I was a kid whose parents drove around every day, to all these listings on the weekend. And while everyone else had family day on Sunday, I was in the backseat of the car. And it's probably because of that I was listening to comics and jokes, and all I could do was make a joke, because the only way I could be heard in my family was by being funny. And so I pursued that because that was my way to get attention. My parents laughed, and they thought I was, they saw me as somebody more than everybody else that seemed so boring and dull. And then quickly realized I couldn't really make a career out of this. And if I wanted to have a family, this was not going to be what I was going to go do. But I wasn't going to jump into real estate because that was just in front of me and it was too easy. And it was what my parents did. And I don't know, it just didn't seem right for me. And so I pursued this, this, and this. And then kind of one day woke up and realized just because it's my family thing, why can't it be my thing also? And I quickly realized was this ability to connect with humans in that backseat of that car was what was connecting me to comedy, was what connecting me to audiences. And my drive and desire and dream is actually to make people feel so excited by something that they don't just see, but they hear. And I can do that every single day now as a real estate agent. And I'm excited to show you real estate that will make you feel something that you never knew you could feel.
Can you make sure we're recording? Make sure we're recording?
Yeah,
Check the
because
cameras.
like I said,
That
his
is good.
superpower is not listening to the end. But I do
I
think it's
listened.
a,
It was fantastic.
no. But what I was going to say is what I
Let's
think.
go back to your original question.
Zach and I
Diane.
mostly speak with sellers. Mostly, of course, we work with buyers, but we have the luxury of working with sellers mostly. And I think what you just explained is a great opportunity for him to convey the way with which he gets enthusiasm every day when actually selling the house when buyers come to visit. And no matter what you may see on TV, the primary role of the listing agent is to sell the shit out of the house. And it's hard for people over time to maintain enthusiasm, particularly with life, business, market. I think this is a great way for you to say that. I think another piece of adding on would be like, you're like, the other thing that I got from riding around in the car with them was like through osmosis, I learned every neighborhood and house in this city when my friends were playing sports. Like, I knew the comps when I was like 8.
Yeah, I love that.
And I would take it a step further also with that too, is I think the joy of a comic is finding the nuance in the world around us. And I think you can connect that to the nuance of the building, of the property, of the town. You've learned through writing on osmosis the nuance of the town, but through comedy you can see the nuances that others maybe can't pull out. And I think you can connect that and be able to say that's part of your strength, is seeing things that others don't, vocalize them, expressing them, and making you actually see them, so much so that you can't help but laugh.
So are we only able to access this by going to like UCLA Extension, or do you have a book yet?
It's in the works.
That's exciting. This is a book I would certainly read.
You already have a book.
I do.
You've already written a book.
I have.
The book of life, pal.
Oh my God.
I'd like you to be my life coach. The last question I want to ask you, and it may be difficult to answer, is circling back to what Ben asked originally, is how do we sell, not ourselves, products and services the same way?
Yeah, it's slightly different. You have to figure out and understand what the person on the other end needs. And I think that's too often miscalculated. We too quickly just walk in and go, let me tell you how great this is. Well, I don't care unless it's solving a problem for me. So the first thing you have to understand is, what's the problem you're solving? What do they really need? What do they not even maybe even know they need yet? Or what's the problem they're having? And how can you prove that this will help make their life easier and better?
Yeah, there's a great author by the name of Phil Jones who says that curiosity leads to certainty, which is what I mentioned earlier. When I first started the company, I was pitching the firm. Then I got some success. I was pitching me. Now I leave the listing presentation in the car. It is just questions. And usually when I get off the phone with someone, whether it was a referral or someone that like maybe we reached out to cold, where we've set an appointment, I say to them, oh, hey, before I let you go, is there anything that's like important to you that you want me to prepare or bring? And that, along with when I first get there, saying, hey, where should we start? I learn so much about the personality style, what they want, need, and then I can try to figure out what's, like, again, what story is going to resonate most. Because most of our colleagues, and believe it or not, the ones that are, like, selling 60 million, 100 million, they will all walk in and say, we have the best marketing. And it's just like, for the consumer, I don't care what level of net worth they are. After a while, just like, but what? How does that, as you said earlier, how does it relate to me?
Yeah,
how does it relate to
I
me?
think knowing what they want and then developing a story behind it. When I go into a listing like that, I come in with a pre-formulated story, an idea of one that I'll build on, that I think can tell, will make people feel at some point.
Are you like researching them before you go in to find like some sort of common interest?
No, I don't care about them as much as the property, because they don't care about themselves as much. They want to sell this property and make money. Look, they've got 40 million into this. How do you get it out? Well, you don't just do it by coming in and saying, hey, we do this, we do that, here's what we'll do for you. You go in and you make them feel something, And that will in turn convince them that you can make a buyer feel something about this product if you believe in it like that and you approach it with some sort of meaning behind it.
Makes sense.
All right, so this book, when it comes out, will teach us how to sell any product, develop a story behind anything.
Wait, hold on. Before we go, can you tell us a little bit about the Snapchat position?
Yeah, so it was basically brought into this idea of how can I up-level the sales team in a way that no other tech company is, and I quickly realized that the majority of tech companies sell with numbers, and I always like to joke, if numbers told the story, then every movie would be a spreadsheet, and the truth is you need heart, you need emotion, and you need to bring something out of people. And the truth is Snapchat has great number of users every month and every day, but not, let's say, comparably to Google or Instagram. And so if we just go with numbers, we're going to lose. And so we had to really quickly flip the script, create it simpler. I built this whole framework similar to what we do in Hollywood, similar to what I teach at UCLA, understanding how we can actually figure out and discover the problem the brand is having, how we can uniquely solve it in a way that nobody else can, and deliver it in a way that makes you feel something that you just can't help but stand up and sign up.
By the way, I think you're going to be my second UCLA extension course.
It's an MBA course, not a UCLA extension.
Extension course. Do you think this is like ESL for adults?
So, first of all, I want to apologize for my own ignorance. Second of all, I was going to say, for me, in my mind, whenever I say it's extension, it just means like I go pay money and I can get into the class as a non-full-time student, but it sounds like I can.
No, you got to be an MBA student. But we can talk afterwards.
What if we brought you in to like talk to my team, like we'll get you high?
No, I do. I do a lot of consulting in that sense, and coming over and teaching teams how to
50K.
Teaching teams how to tell better stories. What's also very interesting, you find for a lot of companies, is you come in and everyone starts to tell stories, and it's always about the agency. If they're brought in here for Adidas, it was about Adidas, and I quickly stop them and I go, no, your leadership wants you to tell your story. What's great about you? And it becomes this idea of like, wait, they care about me. They want me to understand what I'm great at. And you find that it really helps the team both bond in that moment. They learn life stories about each other that they otherwise would have never talked about. And then they come in the next day almost feeling that much more empowered about the company that they work at.
Oh my God. So you just made me think of something. When I coach my team members on building rapport and creating deeper relationships through these methods, which is natural and also a more fruitful life. I mean, it is enjoyable to connect with people more deeply. I often am met with by the younger agent, not younger, but newer in the business. They'll be like, well, it doesn't feel authentic, or it feels like it's duplicitous. What do you say? I know what I say to them all the time, but what do you say to something like that?
What's duplicitous? The process of what they're learning?
Meaning like they're trying to connect on a more, because they're not in the name of connection, but in the name of like a
Business?
sale.
Yeah. That feels fake. It has to be authentic. We have to actually want to listen. There's nothing worse than hearing someone ask a question, person answers, and before they've answered it, we know that you've been thinking of your next question, and you haven't heard a thing I said. That feels
So what I was going to say about that.
like that. Right on cue.
He's actually really good at that. That's not what he meant, by the way.
No, but I think what you mean is how do you find that authenticity?
Well, you break it down, and what you start to realize is it's like anything, how they define a friend, right? You define a friend and acquaintance. The difference is someone opens up and is honest to you. That's what the true definition of a friend is. And so what you find in these workshops is one person will start to open up and we'll get teary-eyed and we'll tell a story. And then that'll make someone else do it and someone else. And before you know it, maybe not everyone has spoken, but a lot have. And those that have listened have connected to their team in a way they never did before. And then they love it just as much.
God, here's just the tip of the iceberg.
It's amazing.
He's selling his MBA program so well right now. Guys, I want to have you back when you can talk more, because this being served as, how to sell products and services with authenticity, I think is its own book.
It's coming. He's working on it.
I guess he is. So you're going to have to stick by it and maybe come back on the podcast.
You got it.
Because aside from watching and rewatching this podcast, which I'm going to do to learn, where else can we find out this kind of information, these tutorials? Just the book coming up, unless you're an MBA?
Yeah, I don't really. This is the joy of all this is it came out of helping friends. I never expected to do it. I didn't look to do this. I had another script that we were ready to turn in, and this just kind of blindsided me. It was my life interrupted for the second half of my career in a way, and it's been a complete and utter joy to be able to bring this superpower to others and watch them be able to take it and fly with it. So yeah,
Dude, there's definitely a bestseller book in this, like coming down the pipe. I know it.
Definitely, even more than a book. We're gonna monetize this, guys. I told you it'd be a great episode.
All right, take us out, Zach, before with the I told you so.
Zach Goldsmith 24.
I'm at Ben Bellac.
He's at, you're not going to find him.
It's
You're
no
not going to find
Instagram.
me.com.
This is To Live and Buy in Los Angeles.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Super bien.